All right, it's time for one of my favorite segments on this show. It's called Travel Thursday, and a lot of you probably know about this. We started this in the middle of the pandemic when everybody was locked up and dreaming of places to visit. And well, we've continued the practice because we're helping you decide where to go on your next vacation. Join me now is Anindita Chatterjee, who is the founder of Travel Chatter. And Anindita, you've traveled extensively. You've chosen the Canary Islands to speak about today. Why is that?
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for having me again. It's always a pleasure. Yes, and after having traveled to 73 countries, I chose Canary Islands because it was my 6-month-old baby's very first international trip, and I had to ensure that it's a place really exotic. So while all of us love going to Europe, we've all gone to Europe so many times, but when you think of some exotic island, you don't really think of the Canary Islands. It's this tiny speck of land right next to Africa. So it's basically a part of Spain, but it's off the coast of Africa. And it's made up of 7 islands. It's an archipelago, but there are main 7 islands that you can visit. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Also, it's not very expensive. It's not as expensive as mainland Europe. And hence, of course, it makes it a perfect choice for travelers like us.
I'm glad you said that. And it sounds amazing. I was, in fact, looking at the Canary Islands on the map, and it looked like a very tiny speck. How do you get there?
So you fly from India, you take any flight to Barcelona or Madrid in Spain. That costs around 75 to 80,000 for a return ticket. From Barcelona or from Madrid, you then fly into the Canary Islands. It's around a 3.5 hours flight, and a to and fro flight from Canary Islands to any city in Spain will cost around 12 to 14,000 return ticket. That's how it is. So it's not really very expensive. And the good part about the Canary Islands is it's very well connected. So you can also fly from the Canary Islands to any other countries in Europe.
Fantastic. And you've already told us the cost. I'm guessing this is your regular visa that you will need for Europe, right?
Yes, so this works for Schengen visa. So if you have a Schengen visa where you can go all over Europe, Canary Islands is just a part of Spain. So it takes you there as well.
How long would you say that an individual or a couple should spend, or a family should spend in the Canary Islands?
Now that totally depends on how many islands would you want to visit. According to me, I think 2 islands was good enough. And a week to 10 days trip is absolutely great. You can break up the week 10 days into 2 islands. So the biggest island, the largest island, and the most populated, the most visited island is Tenerife in Canary Islands. Everyone goes there and it's so beautiful. So you must have Tenerife on your list. You can fly into Tenerife, spend around 4 to 5 days in Tenerife, and around 3 to 4 days in Gran Canaria. In Gran Canaria, the largest city, Las Palmas, is where you need to go, and then, of course, spend how many ever days you can. But I would say a week to 10 days is absolutely perfect.
So, a week to 10 days. Would you also tie it up with a couple? So, for example, would you spend a little time in Barcelona or maybe Madrid, and then go to the Canary Islands, or maybe on the way back?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, I flew with a 6-month-old baby, and it was a 15 hours flight. So, she and I both needed a break from being on air. So, we landed in Barcelona. We spent 2 days in Barcelona, enjoyed Barcelona. There's just so much character and vibrance in that city. Barcelona is always one of my favorite places to be in. And after having spent a few days, maybe a day or two in whichever city you land in, I would recommend then you fly into the Canary Islands because it's again a 3.5 hours flight and it's an island. So you definitely want to live the island life and relax. But before that, I think it's always a good idea to enjoy the city life as well.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more about the Canary Islands then.
Right.
Once you get there, there's a lot of beach, there's a lot of sand, there's a lot of sun, I'm assuming. Tell us about some of the stuff that you can do there.
Canary Islands is a volcanic island, set of volcanic islands, and hence the beaches are absolutely stunning. They are not like any other beach that you see in Europe. You have black sand beaches and white sand beaches right next to each other. And that's not something that you usually get to see. So the beaches are very, very unique. You have sandy beaches, you have rocky beaches, you have these natural swimming pools. And especially in Tenerife, in the island that I spend the maximum time, you go into these inlets and then you have these huge natural swimming pools where you're sitting at the edge and you have the waves absolutely splashing onto your face, and it's beautiful. The best way to get around in Canary Islands is to rent a car because, again, over there you can go to all the offbeat areas as well. Places like Gran Canaria, like La Palma, the city that I mentioned, a hop on, hop off bus is also available. So you can see the city. You can go to the old town, which is very, very pretty. Christopher Columbus stopped at Canary Islands in one of his trips, and there's a hotel that he stayed at that's converted into a museum now. You can actually go and watch that. There's a lot of history, very nice colonial architecture, colorful houses, very good hotels. Now, in Canary Islands, you can choose between a luxury hotel or a very inexpensive Airbnb.
With us, Anindita, we unfortunately have only a couple of minutes more, but you were telling us about the cost of the stay, and you were saying that Airbnbs are actually quite cheap. I was asking, how much would it come to per day?
An Airbnb would come to around 4.5 to 5,000 rupees a day, whereas a luxury hotel will be anywhere between 125 to 150 USD per night.
And specifically staying in those places, how early do you think you should start planning? And you mentioned 2 islands. If you were to see more, how many? I mean, you could obviously see all of it, but what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend seeing the 2 islands because they're really good and pretty much gives you a taste of the Canary Islands and you know exactly what to expect. You also have coastal dunes over there. You have a very nice valley called the Masca Valley. You have one of the oldest trees called the Dragon Tree, which you go to see in a town in Tenerife. So there's a lot to see. The tallest mountain peak of Spain is in Tenerife Island in the Canary Islands. So I think if you cover these 2 islands, you pretty much have it all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anindita, for taking the time. And you've painted lovely pictures. We've been, privileged to see some of the pictures that you've sent us as well. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me.